Ravens at the Patriots. Some of the back and forth, some of the bouquets thrown by and between a couple of former MVPs in Lamar Jackson and Cam Newton.
Man, my boy Lamar got a gift not many human beings got.
Game recognized game. You know, he the OG. He was Superman.
For him to be as successful and to make the impact, the big splash in this game, you know, not many people have done it. You know, I say Michael Vick, I say Lamar. You know, I don't even think I'm in that stratosphere.
I watched Cam since Auburn. You know, everyone in the country did. Everyone know about Cam Superman. You know, doing his thing. You know, and a lot of us looked up to him. He's a mobile quarterback. He do his thing.
He's a person who has took this league by storm, and especially, you know, early on, the doubt that came with it. I mean, we all can relate to, you know, being second guess question. Can he play? He got bust written all over him and things like that. And for him to succeed through it all, you know, makes him the true underdog story that we all love to root for.
Joining the program now, someone who spent 14 seasons in the National Football League, now with NBC Sports Boston, former Patriots and other team quarterbacks, Matt Cassel. Matt, what's up, buddy?
How are you, man? Good to be on the program.
Hey, I'm doing great. Good to have you. Welcome to the family, sort of. We're all under the NBC Sports umbrella, so we appreciate you very much. And it's great to be talking to a quarterback who actually knows what he's talking about. I talk to one 4 days a week who I'm convinced doesn't know what he's talking about, and Chris Sims. It's good to have somebody with me who actually, you know, won some games and spent some time in the league. And anyway, it is great to have you. And I love Chris. I say that about Chris. I'd say it to his face. I love Chris, but you're part of us now too, and it's great to have you, Matt.
Oh, I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm happy to be on. And you guys have a lot of good banter going back and forth. I listen to you guys all the time, and it's pretty funny listening to you guys give each other crap all the time. It's great. I love it.
Yeah, we appreciate that. Okay, so Sunday night's game, Ravens-Patriots. Not the cachet that it would have had in past years because the Patriots don't have that sizzle. What's the game plan? What's the rabbit out of the hat that Bill Belichick is going to have to come up with to beat a Ravens team that on paper is clearly better than the Patriots right now?
Right. Obviously, offensively, they've got their work cut out for them against a really good Ravens defense. And it starts for the Patriots offense. It starts with this offensive line. Isaiah Wynn, Joe Thuney, David Andrews, Shaq Mason. These guys have been playing well throughout the course of the year. Now they've had some injuries that they've had to deal with to rotate these guys. But then when they've got their full stable of running backs, and it starts right now with Damian Harris, who's really emerged as kind of their go-to guy. He was a little bit banged up last week. We'll see if he can go. But Rex Burkhead, Sony Michel's supposed to be back, James White. That's really the nucleus and the strength of this offensive unit. So they've got to set the tone in the run game, because when you go outside, and this is where the mismatch really happens in this team. For this team offensively is the weapons on the outside to complement that run game. And right now, Jacoby Myers has emerged over these last few weeks, which has been pretty incredible. I mean, he's got 22 receptions in 3 games where the guy really didn't even suit up early on in the year because of injuries to Julian Edelman, N'Keal Harry, and so he's finally got his opportunity. He really played well last week, but then from there you got Damiere Byrd. You haven't had a lot of production at the tight end position, so they've got a tough task, especially going up against the defense. When you look at their secondary with the Ravens, with Marlon Humphreys, and these guys, I mean, they're a good group, and they're going to pressure them and they're going to get after them. So they've got to get going with that run, and then at the same time be able to set up the play action.
And we've seen the Patriots defense, Matt, struggle with the run just a couple of weeks ago, blown off the field by the San Francisco 49ers. And we've seen what the Ravens can do, 265 yards against Pittsburgh just a couple of weeks ago between Lamar Jackson, Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins. Is there a way that Bill Belichick can coach guys that may just not be physically suited to handling that kind of a rushing attack and slow down what the Ravens do best?
You summed it up right there. I mean, 49ers went for 197. Buffalo Bills went for 190. They've struggled stopping the run. And really, it comes down to personnel. So far this year, obviously, we know about the opt-outs. We know about the losses in free agency with Van Noy and Jamie Collins and Danny Sheldon and these guys. But at the same time, their personnel group has primarily been in nickel, which is not a big personnel group from a run-stopping front, where you normally would see the Patriots in a 3-4 defense, loaded box with big, stout guys. Hightower obviously opted out. But now you're talking about a group where Adrian Phillips is really a primary linebacker, which he's normally in the safety position. And it's a very difficult offense in terms of going up against the Baltimore Ravens, the physicality that they bring. They're usually in a lot of 22 personnel. When I say 22 personnel, I mean two tight ends, two backs in the backfield. Sometimes they're in three tight end sets. And then the way that they set up their offense, the great job that Greg Roman does in the different looks, the pre-snap motions, all the different movements, the pulling guards, the misdirection, the RPOs. It's really difficult to prepare for something like that. And then not only that, but in terms of the physicality that they bring, I just don't know if the New England Patriots can sustain and will be able to go out there and just out physical them, because right now they just don't have the depth on the defensive line at the linebacker position, particularly with Joquan Bentley being out. Lawrence Guy was out last week, who's really their best run stopper. And if those guys aren't back, it's going to be a tough order, to say the least.
Matt, you could look at this game and wonder why in the world isn't the headline Lamar versus Cam? We played the sound earlier about those two praising each other. Cam doesn't have the sizzle at this point that maybe we thought he was going to have a couple of months into the season. What does he need to do to get back on that track that it felt like he was on before he tested positive for COVID-19?
Right. You know what? It's one of those interesting parts. I mean, every season has ebbs and flows, but this one has been just a dramatic change. You know, like you said, Dolphins and the Seahawks game, you had a great promising outings. Like you're sitting there going, this could be the Cam Newton of old. He's really starting to grow. And then COVID hit right after that Raiders game. He missed the Chiefs games, came back against the Broncos. They struggled a lot. And some of that was due to the offensive line and the issues that they had with, you know, moving parts and all that stuff with guys being injured and out because of COVID-related stuff. But then 49ers was by far his worst game. He struggled. He was benched in the third quarter, 3 interceptions, and they weren't just interceptions. They were bad interceptions. And everybody starts to question and wonder, can this guy do it? And then all of a sudden, these last 2 weeks really is where you can start to see progress. And he's starting to get back to the player that we saw early on. And between the Bills and the Jets, he was 40 for 57 for 234. No TDs, but 3 rushing TDs and no interceptions. So if he can continue that trend and continue to work and take care of the football, which that was the biggest issue in the middle of the season, was him turning over the ball and playing reckless at that quarterback position. If he can take care of the football, put his team in a good position, throw the ball accurately, let the run game speak for itself, and then let some of the athleticism take over when he's running the ball, then he'll be in a good position and he'll help this football team.
Matt, we all have our crosses to bear professionally. I have to work with Chris Sims. You have to work with Tom Curran. Bill Belichick has to answer questions from time to time from Tom Curran. Here's an exchange from earlier today between Curran and Belichick. Let's listen to it, and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
Do you have any idea why you've had a harder time getting consistent production and development from the guys that you've selected in the draft?
Well, let's say look, anytime you bring a player onto your team, you put them into a role or a situation that you think fits him. Sometimes you have to modify that a little bit as you get to know the player. And then you work with him to try to develop that. So the most important thing to me is winning games. And I'm not going to apologize for our record over the last 20 years. I mean, I've a lot worse. So ultimately, we try to put the best team on the field that we can to be competitive, and I don't really see that changing.
Tom Curran tried one more time to get Bill Belichick to address the failure to develop draft picks in recent years before Belichick finally said, I'm only focused on the Ravens this week. After talking about it for 5 minutes, then he says, I'm only focused on the Ravens this week. Matt, what's your assessment of this disconnect between draft picks, development, and who's ultimately contributing now? Because you need that nucleus of guys who have been going through the pipeline over the years to rise up and be the heart and soul of your team, and it feels like the Patriots don't have that right now.
Right. It's really been since Jamie Collins was drafted, I believe in 2013 was the really last Pro Bowl selection. And if you even go to the wide receiver position, which we talked about consistently, they've had production there, but it's really guys that they've brought in since 2010 and the draft picks that they've had. I don't think that those guys have accumulated more than like 1,500 yards receiving in that entire tenure of the last 10 years of guys that's been drafted since 2010. So there's definitely some misses, and you have to build a nucleus within the draft because you only get so many guys every single year. And there's a lot of question marks going on right now about their draft picks, why they've done certain things, why in 2000, going into the 2018 season when Lamar was on the board and some of these other guys, why didn't they take a quarterback at that point? Because Tom was getting older. They knew inevitably that he was probably going to move on. You know, there's all these discussion points. And so, you know, the thing that Bill points to is, yes, he's always got that trump card, right? He always could say, well, I'm not too concerned considering my record over the last 20 years, but now he's lost his franchise quarterback. They're in a rebuilding stage right now. And this is where, when you lose a guy like Tom Brady, who kind of can cover up a lot of those inconsistencies that you might have at other positions, now it's starting to show its head a little bit. And you start to question, okay, well, where were those draft picks and why aren't we producing like some of these other organizations are?
Hey, I agree with you, Matt. When in doubt, just flash the rings. That's all you got to do.
You know what?
Flash the rings.
He's a two-hander. I mean, he's got rings for every. I mean, let's be honest. It's not just one hand you have to see, and one finger you're sticking up. You're sticking up like six. I mean, my goodness, you've got an argument there.
Hey, real quick, since you played with Tom Brady and he's now with a new team and he's trying to get number 7 down in Tampa, what do you think needs to change there for that team after they got splattered on Sunday night?
Right. Well, you know, when you watch that game on Saturday night, it was all about protection. And to start the game, they came out and they went, I believe their first 4 series were all 3 and outs. And you can't start a game like that against the Saints, a division rival who knows you. And if you get behind the ball, then they basically, they got away from running the ball with Ronald Jones. They got away from running it at all, really. And they were stuck trying to throw the ball. And sometimes, you know, having all that weapon, all those weapons, it's a luxury. But at the same time, you're trying to figure out, okay, who am I going to get the ball to? And everybody needs to get the ball distributed to them. And it's sometimes hard, I would think, as a play caller to try to figure out and create plays to design to go to all these different weapons and not have a one focal point, right? And it's a great problem to have. At the same time, they got to get back on board with running the ball. They got to stay ahead on down and distance. They got to get into manageable third downs, because if you don't do that in this league, the pass rush is too good and the guys can come after you. And it's hard on any quarterbacks, particularly Tom Brady, when he's a pocket passer. You know what I mean? You've got to protect the pocket, and if they know you got to pass, they're going to pin their ears back and they're going to come after you.
Matt, excellent stuff. Let's do it again real soon. All the best to you and the folks at NBC Sports Boston, and thanks for some of your time, pal.
Absolutely, Mike. Have a great one, buddy.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.